start Planning Commission meeting. May we please take roll call?
Commissioner Kreiner? Commissioner Kreiner? Commissioner Kreiner?
Can you speak up a little bit? He might not have been able to hear you. We're a little faint.
Commissioner Kreiner? Commissioner Wagner? Okay. Commissioner Diaz?
Here.
Commissioner Hardy?
Here, thank you.
Chair Vang?
Here.
Commissioner Kreiner?
Commissioner Kreiner, if you're online, may you please state that you're present? Commissioner Kreiner, you're currently on mute right now. If you are present in the Zoom call, please unmute yourself and state that you're here. All right, so what we're going to do is, Commissioner Kreiner, I see that you're online throughout the process. If you can, if you do hear us, please state that you're here. But for now, we'll go ahead. No? Okay. Well, Commissioner Kreiner, may you please state that you're here? We need to make sure that we do have a quorum. Appreciate everyone's patience. Commissioner Kreiner might have, he might still be functioning on modem right now instead of DSL. So appreciate everyone's patience. Go ahead and can you take roll again, please?
Commissioner Kreiner?
Commissioner Kreiner, may you please state that you're present?
Present.
Okay.
Commissioner Diaz?
Here.
Commissioner Hardy?
Here.
Chair Vang?
Here. Thank you. Appreciate it. Before we start, we do have translation services available, whether you're in physical attendance or you're online. Do we have the instructions for that?
Yes, hello everyone. If you are joining us in person this evening and you need interpretation services in Spanish, Hmong, or Punjabi, please head to the back of the room. Otherwise, if you are joining on Zoom, you'll go ahead and select the interpretation globe and choose your preferred language. That includes our English-speaking attendees as well. Please select the English interpretation channel. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So next up, we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance. We will now begin the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, everyone, please stand. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I will read the procedures for the meeting. This meeting is being conducted electronically and telephonically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link or calling the phone number provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on the item, use the raise hand function on Zoom, or if you are calling in, dial *9. To avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand or dialing *9. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. Next, we have agenda approval. We will start today's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Comment. Staff proposes no changes to the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Will. Do any commissioners have any changes to the agenda or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hardy.
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Diaz. May we please take a roll?
Commissioner Crainer? Commissioner Crainer?
Commissioner Kreiner, can you hear us?
I can now. I'm having major audio issues, and I don't know why, but I can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now. Staff, you try again.
Commissioner Crainer?
Can you hear staff?
I can hear you.
He can hear me, so you need to speak. Try a different microphone.
Michael's a lot quieter than you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
It's very faint in the background, I mean.
Commissioner Crainer?
I can hear you. Look, yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
Chair Vang?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Under the consent calendar, we have item 5A, ID 22635. It's regarding September 1st, 2021 Planning Commission regular meetings. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hardy, second by Commissioner Diaz. Let's go ahead and please take the vote.
Commissioner Crainer?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
Chair Vang?
Yes, motion passes. Next up, we have reports by commissioners. Do we have any commissioners with reports that they want to make? I see none. We're going to go ahead and move to continue matters. So under continue matters, we have item ID 22704. This is for the consideration of an appeal file regarding the conditional use permit application number 06304. Let's go ahead and, I know last time we had staff present, and then the applicant was going to present too, but to make sure everyone's on the same page, may we please have the staff present again?
Testing. All right, good evening, commissioners and the public. We thank you for coming tonight. We're just gonna get the presentation up shortly, and then we'll proceed with staff presentation. This is the consideration of an appeal filed regarding conditional use permit application number P21-06304 and the related environmental assessment. I want to first give a brief recap of the trends that we are now seeing with cell towers. Staff has been told by various cell tower companies and tower operators that slimline monopoles are no longer a feasible option when it comes to cell towers, due to the technology and the requirements of not being confined in a small space. So cell towers are requiring a more expansive array, like what we see on the far right picture currently on the screen. One of the alternatives to the exposed tower is a mono tree, and there are various species which they may reflect. The second from the left photo is a mono pine tree, and the one on the second from the right is a mono eucalyptus tree. The aesthetics and quality of these mono trees are improving. Trees are now, they can have a three-dimensional bark cladding, along with a variety of different faux foliage to match the surrounding settings. There are 6 options that we can currently see on the screen, but there's many more out there. So this conditional use permit was filed by Trisha Knight of TEK Consulting on behalf of Verizon Wireless, and it pertains to the parcel at 640 R Street. And the applicant proposes to construct an 80-foot tall monopine telecommunications tower and associated ground compound. The proposed tower is to enhance the wireless service on the eastern side of downtown, in addition to the residences and businesses east of State Route 41. This tower has been evaluated against multiple sections of the code to ensure that it would meet all the standards. And cell towers are permitted all across the city through a conditional use permit. And they are regulated by, one of the ways they're regulated is section 15-2759 of the Fresno Municipal Code, which states that telecommunications and wireless facilities shall comply with the city's policy pertaining to said uses. The regulations are intended to provide for the appropriate development of the facilities within the city and meet the needs of residences, business owners, and visitors while protecting public health and safety and preventing visual blight and degradation of a community's aesthetic character. And the tower was compared to the policies and procedure issue number 33 and it satisfied all requirements. Here is just an aerial of the location. It is to the west of State Route 41, right north of Ventura. It is across from the Slush Puppy Warehouse there and the Bitwise 41. Here is a zoning classification map. To the west and north, we have downtown zoning, and to the east, we have single-family residential, and to the south, we have industrial and mixed use. Regarding the appeal letter that was received, the first 3 were similar, and they claimed that the planning department did not provide any drawings or perspectives of the proposed tower, and the appellant did not believe that the tower will improve Fresno's visual image, and the appellant had concerns about the aesthetics of the landscaping and the tower overall. Staff's response to these issues is, as stated in the notice of intent to take action and also the notice of action, it was stated that all documents were available by contacting staff or the planning department, and the appellant did not request any information before filing the appeal on March 8th. It is not known what the appellant reviewed in their own research, but they did state that they made their decision on the aesthetics based off of that. And staff is asking the Planning Commission to consider the aesthetics of the proposed tower based on the exhibits and renderings submitted. Excuse me. Issue number 4, the appellant listed 6 alternative locations to consider for the proposed tower. And the applicant provided an alternative site analysis which examined, I know, more than 10 sites. And the location that was picked had the only landlord willing to make an agreement or had the location which would effectively achieve service expansion in the target area. In issue number 5, the appellant stated that the Planning and Development Department should have considered alternative designs for the tower in addition to a height decrease. Planning staff contacted the appellant for alternative design ideas, and the appellant indicated they would attend the Planning Commission meeting to express those ideas. Here we see a photo simulation of the proposed tower, and it is important to note that photo simulations are simulations and do not always accurately represent the final product. This project was conditioned to have a 3-dimensional bark cladding and to have a foliage which will match the foliage of the trees that we see in the background. And around the compound, we can see that there will be landscaping to help cover the CMU wall. Here we see some of the project exhibits showing that the proposed monopine will be of a similar height to the existing trees. And on the left-hand side, it is a little hard to see, I apologize for that, but there is going to be a covering across the top to help prevent unauthorized access into the compound. There were concerns brought up about the scenic view impact both from ground level and from Highway 41. From street level, it does not appear there will be any scenic impact to downtown, as if you're looking at the proposed tower from our street, you're looking away from downtown. And from the freeway, there's only a 232-foot stretch to where the tree would be visible. And a car traveling 65 miles an hour travels 95.3 feet per second, and cars would drive by the tree in less than 3 seconds, and there's not any expected impact. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission consider the environmental assessment, number P21-06304, dated February 24th, 2022, a determination that the proposed project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, through a section 15303, Class 3, and 15332, Class 32 categorical exemption. And staff is recommending that the Planning Commission deny the appeal and uphold the action of the Planning and Development Department Director in the approval of the conditional use permit.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for me?
Do we have any questions from the commissioners? I do have a question. Since our previous meeting, have you had any individuals from that area reach out to the city in regards to the situation?
No, Chair Vang.
No. Thank you. I will now invite the applicant to go ahead and present. Is the applicant inside the chambers or are they online?
Online. They're online, Chair.
Okay. If you're online, please raise your hand and we'll let you speak on this matter.
I am raising my hand. Can you hear me?
Yes, Trisha, we can hear you.
Okay, good. And so I am looking to share my screen so that I can go through my presentation with you.
All right. Are you able to
Just
share
a
now,
moment.
Trisha?
There we go. I believe so. Can everyone see my screen? Sorry.
No, Trisha,
Hello?
try again. I just adjusted some settings.
You did. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now?
Not yet.
Nope.
Not yet. Okay. Share screen. Here we go. Okay. Let's try one more.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Good evening. My name is Trisha Knight, representing Verizon Wireless. I work with SAC Wireless as the primary consultant to Verizon for this project. I did want to see, technologically speaking here, we've got, and I'll introduce the panel of people, but if I'm not mistaken, anytime someone needs to speak, they're just going to raise their hand, and then we can switch to that person for answering questions. Is that accurate?
We're going to go ahead and let you speak first, Miss, and then after your presentation,
Okay.
we'll let the public speak.
I'm online, Trisha.
We have, okay. We just have other entities that are going to speak to different, and we'll go through that. So my name
I
is
did
Trisha
add
Knight.
Peter and Paul.
Okay, Peter and Paul, and I also need Walt if you have, if you see Walt there.
Let's see.
Walt Coles.
He has yet to
As you
raise
do
his
that,
hand.
okay, Walt, raise your hand if you can hear
There
me.
we go.
Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and get started. Once again, Trisha Knight with Verizon Wireless. I've got also Peter Ferreri with SAC Wireless representing Verizon, who does the lease negotiations and alternative site reviews for the project. We've got Walt Coles, who is the radio frequency design engineer for Verizon, and he'll be speaking to various aspects if those issues come up. And then I've also got Paul Albritton, who is Verizon legal counsel. I will say that Paul is a little bit compromised that he's got laryngitis this evening. You can hear him, but if he talks, it's going to be very, very quiet. So I'll go ahead and get started here, moving to the next slide. So one thing to make note of here is that we've been in process with looking and identifying a facility in this area since fall of 2019, which is when a service gap is identified with the engineers, and we start looking for properties. And the best way I can describe it is that we have to have things line up. We have to have a lease. We have to be able to construct it. We have to be able to permit it. And then it has to primarily reach the coverage objectives that the engineers are trying to fill a gap. We started looking at those locations in July of 2020 and looking at site design. In 2021, July of 2021, we filed the application with the city. We did go through the District 3 Project Review Committee with the monoplan design you're reviewing tonight, and was approved for that. And then we were approved by the planning director in February of 2022, and then the appeal was filed in March, and that's what brings us here. Moving to the next slide to give you just a snapshot of our coverage objectives here. So these green areas here, and here are where the existing facilities are within the city. And then these red and yellow areas here reflect where there's no reliable in-building or in-vehicle coverage, especially in eastern downtown and the residential and businesses east of Highway 41. And there's lack of a strong signal in those gap areas. So when we're also increasing demand of the existing Del Webb facility, which is here, this proposed facility would offload the capacity backlog that we're having in that particular area. And then as you move down to the next slide, you can see you would have our facility proposed if it was approved and constructed. There would be new reliable in-building service to about 6,100 residents and new and reliable in-vehicle coverage to local roadways around Highway 41, which has about 100,000 trips per day. And it relieves the demand. So just I always equate it to actually on-ramps on the highway. They become congested the more we're all using our devices. And so this helps to alleviate that backlog or that bottleneck. And as I move down to the next slide, we looked at several different locations, 17 to be exact. And like I was sort of indicating that those stars that have to align, they either fall out due to not able to cover the service gap. We cannot reach into a lease negotiation or an agreement with a specific landlord. The zoning codes have a 100-yard facility setback from one facility to the next. Sometimes there's not enough ground space for us to fit our equipment. And in this particular, because we're doing a monopine, there could be lack of trees nearby to give context to the facility. So with those discounted reasons, you'll see them all lined up here and the various reasons why they fell out. These last ones at the bottom in yellow are the ones that were included in the appeal. And so we reviewed those, and we can go through those in more detail. I'm just giving you a snapshot here. And then as we go to design, so there are design guidelines within the city of Fresno currently that indicate that all new structures shall be a monopine. I believe that was due to the high number of monopoles that were in the area. And so we were directed by staff and also chose this due to its co-locatability. So you can fit several carriers going down here, and you can clearly see that the antennas at the top are screened with antenna socks, and then we've got the matching foliage as you go down. And then we've also got existing trees to give that context. It's also worth noting that the closest residence is approximately 360 feet away, and we've got that new landscaping at the base. And that concludes my presentation. I would like to read something into record. We submitted this yesterday, and staff alerted me today that this was not, didn't make it into the record in time. And so we did reach out to the appellants and the Huntington Park Condominium Village Board of Directors members. We had a Zoom call with them on May 3rd. It was about an hour long, and we went over site history, coverage objectives, and alternatives and design slide presentation. And then we opened up the floor for comments. Verizon Wireless listened to the questions from the participants, Larry Taylor and Sean Boyd, and then responded. We had an open discussion on each of those issues. We went through the alternatives and design alternatives and gave reasons why they would not work and the constraints of each of those, and I can go through those in more detail if the time comes. Like I said, there's that 100-yard setback from existing facility to a proposed facility. And then we gave them some background of their questions of why we couldn't just expand some of those existing facilities in my presentation. And we can go through that in more detail as well. The mono tree design was one that staff, due to those guidelines of new facilities being a monopine and the fact that they are co-locatable, and this has enough ground space for multiple carriers should that come to pass. And so we went through several different designs. You'll probably hear them when the appellants are speaking, but there was Italian designs and various other elements that they looked at with respect to alternate designs. And we have reasons that we can go through as to why they would not function well for us as expanding our network in this location. So I would like to enter this into public record. I have emailed it to my planner to make sure it makes it to you. And that concludes my presentation right now, if you should have any questions.
Ms. Knight, do you have anyone else from your team that wants to speak on this matter?
I don't believe so right now. We would respectfully request time for a rebuttal and to answer questions of either the appellant or the commission as they arise.
Thank you. Any commissioners have questions? Ms. Knight, I do have a question. Did you get a chance to look at the appellant's letter?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So the appellant lists 6 alternative sites. Out of the 17 sites that was on your report, did those 6 sites, were they a possible alternative out of those 17?
So those are the last ones here in yellow.
Okay.
The reasons they fall out are listed here. So most of them cannot fill that service gap area, as you can see in this map. It's the area in between all of these existing facilities that needs to be covered. And you can see how well the proposed facility does that. And so we can go into more details one by one if you'd like to do that now. And we're prepared to speak to each of these as questions come up.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from commissioners? No? Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll open this up to the public. First off, are there any members of the public who wish to comment in favor of the application that are in the chambers? If you're a member of the public on Zoom and would like to comment on an item, please use the raise hand function, or if you are calling in, dial *9. Again, this is for public comment that is in support of the actual item itself. Do we have any individuals online with their hand raised?
No hands are raised at the moment.
Okay, so next up, we'll go ahead and open this to members of the public who would like to comment in opposition of the application that are inside the chambers. If you are a member of the public on Zoom and would like to comment on an item, please use the raise hand function, or if you're calling in, dial *9. If you are in opposition of this item, please, if you're inside the chambers, please come up to the microphone, state your name, and state your residence.
Hi, good evening, commissioners and the public. My name is Sean Boyd. I reside at 2890 Huntington Boulevard, Unit 123, which is part of the Huntington Park Condominium Village in downtown Fresno, which is near the applicant's proposed project and the conditional use permit. I do have a PowerPoint to present, if I may, and I think they're queuing it up now. Go ahead. Thank you. So when this first came up, our board of directors did appoint a subcommittee to function in opposition to this project, consisting of myself, my neighbor Renee Johnson, and my neighbor Larry Taylor, who will come up and speak in time. So here's a little history of our complex. Huntington Park Condominium Village is the first modern urban housing development that was built in the downtown Fresno core. It was a redevelopment project back when there used to be a redevelopment agency. The first documents and condominium covenants and restrictions were recorded on January 31st, 1980. You see the stamp there. And no doubt, this project came before this very body 42 years ago, your predecessors who approved this project, enticing professionals to live in downtown Fresno. Here is a map of what it looks like from a bird's eye view. The developer was Central Urban Developers Incorporated. The developer was Robert Klein II. He actually resided for the first year in unit number 174. This is on the southeast corner of Huntington Boulevard and R Street. We have 88 units in the development that was built in 2 phases. Units 101 to 146 were opened on May 1st, 1981, and then phase 2 opened a few months later. Later on in 1981. I was one of the first purchasers. I closed escrow on May 1st, 1981. Here is the logo of the developer, Central Urban Developers, and their marketing material at the time said that this is going to be an urban village with blocks of libraries, government offices, hospitals, banks, the sports arena and city hall, national historic site buildings, the old cathedral, Fresno's financial and professional center. Now you can add the expanding bitwise complexes to that list of amenities. Here is a look at what it looks like from the front. We have 5 floor plans labeled A through E, ranging from 1,508 square feet to 2,106 square feet. This is a look at what our front entrance looks like. It's very appealing. As you can see, there are a lot of trees there. About 2/3 of our units are owner occupied and about 1/3 are rentals. Without question, it is some of the most attractive, affordable housing anywhere in Fresno when you look at what the market is doing today. Regency Property Management is our manager. Here is a look at some of our amenities. It's a very attractive park-like setting, as you can see. Some of the original sycamore trees from previous residences were also preserved in the common areas. I understand.
Boyd, my apologies for interrupting you.
I understand, but you see what's going to happen is that the applicant is going to have a rebuttal, and we won't have a rebuttal.
Correct. No, I'm going to give you an additional 3 minutes, just because I understand that you represent the community too. So I want to be respectful of that, and you take this time to actually put this presentation together too. So I'll give you an additional 3 minutes if that's fine with you.
I appreciate that very much, Commissioner Bang. I really do. Here are some of our amenities, as you can see. We have 2 tennis courts, 2 pools, 2 spas. People that come to our complex for the first time say, wow, I didn't know there was such a beautiful place to live in downtown Fresno. And this is what some of our patios look like, our restricted common areas. People have great pride in maintaining their residences. Here is a look at Mono Street behind our complex. Our complex is off to the right. Recently, the city vacated the Mono Street dead end Part of it is owned by the firefighters, whose building is on the right. Part of it is on the left, owned by Twining Moore, the applicant involved. So we contend that this proposal, as proposed, will present a monstrosity in downtown Fresno in view of our residences. You can see in yellow our complex outline in both of those maps. You can see the rendering that the city and Verizon provided. You can see the project site relative to where we live. And these are the items that are going to be on that tower. I won't go into that in the interest of time. What's really, really interesting is that finding B, goal 15, states that the overall design shall be aesthetically pleasing. And sometimes they use the word will instead of shall, which puzzles me greatly. Which is it? Whose standards? By whose standards is this aesthetically pleasing? We think that the project as proposed is going to add more blight to downtown Fresno. And I understand what Mr. Martinez said about driving 95 feet per second as you drive 65 miles an hour, but we're not driving 95 feet per second. We live there, and we can see it out our windows. And of course, the mayor, Mayor Dyer,
Mr. Boyd.
has a Beautify Fresno initiative, and we contend that this does not
Mr.
comply
Boyd,
with
my apologies, Mr. Boyd, again.
I understand.
No, my apologies for interrupting you, but
We don't think this beautifies Fresno, and I'm finished.
Mr.
Thank
Boyd, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have some of the commissioners discuss any kind of disclosures. Do we have any commissioners that want to go ahead and have any disclosures?
Yeah, hi, Brad from Regency. I just realized that a company that I'm affiliated with manages that property, so I'll have to recuse. I apologize.
All right, so because of Commissioner Hardy is going to recuse himself, unfortunately, we don't have a quorum. We're going to have to go ahead and continue the matter. Okay? All right.
So, Chair Vang, we will continue this matter to the next Planning Commission meeting, which will be on May 18th at 6 p.m. And I apologize to those of you who are here tonight. We anticipate that we will not have a quorum issue at that time.
And Mr. Boyd, do you have my word that at the next meeting, you won't get interrupted? Okay, you're going to have full presentation. I'll give you ample time to go ahead and discuss your presentation. Okay? Yes, definitely, definitely. I want to make sure that every single person that's in the chambers tonight at the next meeting, you're going to have your time to speak. Okay? All right, so are we allowed to give her a speak or no? We're going to stop the matter and continue it?
Well, this
Go ahead.
is in regards to something that was asked Mr. Martinez by Mr. Vang.
Right, but this item, because we don't have a quorum, is continued, so we can't continue discussion on the item at all.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll have to take up your comments on May 18th.
Okay, I'll contact Mr. Martinez.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is ID 22657. This is for the consideration of amendment to Section 3.9A Development Agreement between the City of Fresno and 2500 MLK LLC. May we please have the staff present? We have Commissioner Hardy back online, correct?
Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rob with Planning and Development Department. And today, or tonight, staff brings forth consideration of an amendment to the West Creek Village Development Agreement. This application was submitted by Jeff Reed of McCormick Barstow LLC on behalf of Sylvester Hall of Blue Ocean Development America LLC. This item was continued from the April 20th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting with the recommendation from the Commission that the Southwest Fresno community meet with staff to discuss the project. Since then, staff has met twice with 4 members from the community, once on April 25th and once on May 3rd, to discuss the project. The West Creek Village Master Plan area is bounded by Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to the east, Jensen Avenue to the south, Knight Avenue to the west, and Church Avenue to the north. The original development agreement for the West Creek Village project received final approval on March 5th, 2020. The West Creek Village project is a mixed-use activity center that will accommodate a diversified housing stock, commercial amenities, and anchored by the Fresno City College West Fresno Satellite Campus. The subject matter of the proposed amendment to the development agreement is Section 3.9, Subsection A, Density Limitations. This section specifies the density requirements of the entirety of the West Creek Village project area, which cannot exceed 481 total residential units comprised of 92 single-family detached, 25 single-family attached, 264 multifamily, and 100 lofts over ground floor retail. Section 3.9A subsection 2 of the development agreement states that any amendment to this section shall not be processed as a minor change pursuant to section 3.3 of the development agreement. Looking at section 3.3 subsection C of the development agreement states that all changes not considered minor changes will be considered major changes and shall require council approval. Considering section 3.9A2 states that an amendment to section 3.9 cannot be considered a minor change, then a major change to be approved by council is required. Thus the reason we're bringing this to you today. The proposed amendment to section 3.9A of the development agreement proposes to remove the verbiage specific to the number of specified residential use types, specifying 92 single-family detached, 25 single-family attached, 264 multifamily, and 100 lofts over ground floor retail. The intent of the amendment would still keep intact the maximum total residential units allowed, which is 481, while also allowing further flexibility in the residential use types to be allowed within the West Creek Village project area. The West Creek Village project area is included within the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan. Preparation of the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan was funded in part by the Community Development Block Grant Program, otherwise known as CDBG. The lands within the West Creek Village project area were more specifically refined and annexed for inclusion in the plan through the allocation of separate city funds. The adoption of the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan also made the area within its boundaries eligible for transformative climate communities, known as TCC or Transform Fresno. A few of the Transform Fresno projects within the West Creek Village project area include project number 13, which is the design and construction of a new approximately 9.5-acre public park in the center of the West Creek Village area. Project 18, which is the development of a satellite campus with a park-like setting in large areas of urban greening, new bicycle and pedestrian paths connected to the neighborhood's active transportation plan, and offering workforce training and technical certificates and degree programs. And the last project is the Southwest Fresno Offsite Improvements, which would install active transportation infrastructure, including trails, sidewalks, and bike lanes, as well as underground power lines, and make water utility and roadway improvements along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Church Avenue, Jensen Avenue, and Walnut Avenue in support of multimodal transportation to the new community college campus. The current planned land uses of the West Creek Village project area are shown on this slide. The project area includes commercial community at the northeast corner, commercial regional at the southeast corner, public and institutional for the college at the northwest corner, open space for the community park in the center, and single-family medium density and multifamily medium-high density in the central outer edges of the area. It should be noted that within the entirety of the West Creek Village project area, there would have been an allowance for between 347 and 631 total dwelling units if using the minimum and maximum residential densities specified within the general plan. Instead, that maximum number of the 631 total dwelling units is reduced to 481 per section 3.9A of the development agreement, although the minimum remains the same. In this case, the development agreement governs over the density requirements of the general plan and the development code. The proposed amendment to the development agreement does not propose to change the land uses or zoning for the subject property pursuant to the Southwest Fresno specific plan, nor does it change the uses permissible by the land use designations or zoning in accordance with the Southwest Fresno specific plan. The proposed amendment to the development agreement does not impact or change any components of the West Creek Village, which are elements of the Transform Fresno TCC project, and the proposed amendment to the development agreement does not modify the terms of the agreement, which specify responsibility for adjacent offsite improvements for future projects. Therefore, it's staff's recommendation recommendation to the council for approval of the amendment to the development agreement for the West Creek Village project and associated environmental assessment. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
Brother Chair, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kleiner.
To our guest panelists, my question to you is twofold. Number one, the meeting that you had on I believe you said the 25th of April and the 3rd of May, you stated that there were 4 attendees at that meeting. Is that 4 attendees at each meeting, or are you combining the 2 meetings to say there were 4 total between the 2 meetings?
There were 4 in the first meeting.
There were 4 at just the first one?
Yeah, 4 in the first. I believe it was 4 in the second.
Okay, so there were a total of 8 community members that were able to attend, correct?
It was 3 in the second. I apologize.
That's okay, sir. No problem at all. And my last question to you is, if you can, was the meeting successful, and were there any concerns that came out of that meeting?
Those that met with staff from those 2 meetings, we had discussions between each other. They are in attendance tonight to speak
Okay.
on behalf of themselves.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Brother Chair.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions by commissioners? No. So my question is, so in reality, we are not going, that 481 is still the minimum number, correct?
Maximum.
The maximum number.
347 would be the minimum.
Okay, so with the 481 being the maximum number, what we're doing is we're removing that language and trying to and giving them the flexibility to kind of pick and choose instead of having a specific criteria that they need to meet under the previous.
Correct. They're not limited. Currently, they are limited to those specific comprisals of the 92 single-family detached, 25 attached, and then the 264 multifamily, 100 lofts over that is removed, but not the 481. The intent is still the same in terms of number of residential units for the entirety of the area.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now we'll have a presentation by the applicant. Is the applicant presently in the chambers, or is the individual online? If you are online, please raise your hand.
There are no hands in the chat.
Yeah, we're here, 2 of us.
Perfect. Please state your name and your address.
Jim Shahadi, 405 North Palm, Fresno, 93701.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman, Commissioner, fellow Commissioners, Director, Clark, and City staff. I want to thank everyone for your commitment and your time. I'm Sylvester Hall. I'm a principal along with Mr. Jim Shahadi of 2500 MLK. I'm also a 65-year resident of Southwest Fresno. My mother still lives on the corner of Thorn and Myers. I spent the last 50 years of my life studying away, preparing myself, getting the experience, the resources, and education to come back home to my community in Southwest Fresno, where I was born and raised, to transform that neighborhood back into a community. In 2012, while in graduate school at Craig School of Business, I wrote the strategic plan for the West Creek Village development area. I also spent 3 years on the Southwest Specific Planning Commission, helping to develop the MLK Magnet Core. I also spent over a year working with the community and the city of Fresno on the TCC funding. I personally drove to Sacramento to secure that $70 million for our city and allowed the city of Fresno, 2,500, to be lead applicants for State Center College Community and the 11-acre community park that's going to be built. It is my goal and my life's dream to transform our neighborhood in Southwest Fresno back into a community. With that being said, the amendment to our development agreement is not just the focus of 481 units. We have a community college on 40 acres, an $88 million college. We have a $15 million community park that we're building. And this amendment is just to get one of our stakeholders, the most critical commodity that we need in Southwest Fresno is single-family quality homes. We have farm homes, we have labor houses being built, but we need single-family quality homes. The toughest product to deliver to an area such as Southwest Fresno. And thank God that we had a builder willing to come to our community and build 136 new quality homes. Therefore, we had to amend our development agreement with you to add another 3 acres to their particular site and add an additional 21 homes. That's all this is. Instead of us building 92 homes now, we're going to be able to build 136 homes. And we're targeting those homes for our indigenous people in Southwest Fresno through our anti-displacement, our anti-gentrification policies and procedures. So it's with great humility that we come before you tonight. This should have been a minor change, but due to technical language in our development agreement, it became a major change. But in all actuality, we're talking about adding 21 homes to our particular plan right now. And the whole thought of having to go through anything to stop rebuilding that community is just beyond comprehension. To respond to Commissioner Kreiner's inquiry regarding how many community people have been involved in this particular appeal process or what have you, keep in mind that we held charrettes for 3 months in Southwest Fresno as we planned our community. We invited all 10 schools in Southwest Fresno. We had over thousands of students come to our charrettes, faculty, staff, community leaders, city of Fresno, everyone involved. We have over 20-some thousand people in Southwest Fresno who want to see this project go forward. Those are the people from our community that speak towards our project. I want to thank you, and I appreciate everything that this city and this administration is doing in order to better the lives of people throughout this city. Thank you very much for your work and your commitment.
Thanks, Sylvester. I completely agree. I echo his comments. You know, we couldn't be more proud of the work we've done over the past 5 years, the charrettes and the community input. I think our plan reflects the exact wishes of the community through the dozens of meetings we've had. This is a minor change, but we understand through the verbiage of the development agreement that if we were 1 unit off any of those uses, we would have to be back here. So we think the language is appropriate and that it's almost impossible to plan a development 5-6 years ahead and then come up with the exact number of units that you thought 5-6 years later through a pandemic and, you know, all the challenges of the economy. So, I mean, I think this gives us flexibility going forward. And like the planner said, all our obligations remain. We still fall under CEQA, and we're fully obligated to perform on all other aspects of the development agreement. So thank you for consideration.
Thank you very much. Do we have commissioners with any questions? I have a question for you, for the both of you. Have you had any kind of correspondence with the individuals within the community?
Yeah, let me speak to that, Jim.
Sure.
I want to speak to that. I am a graduate of Kirk Elementary, Lincoln, Irwin, Edison High School. I have over 300 family members that live in Southwest Fresno. My brother, the late Apostle Bernard Ricky Hall of Glory Bound Ministries at Waterman, 916 Waterman, we've been part of this community for over 65 years. We talk to people in the community every day. I cleared out 120 acres over there using 8 young men and women from Southwest Fresno. You know, young Latino workers, young African-American workers, to clear out thousands of trees and shrubs instead of going and hiring contractors. When you talk about talking to the community, we had, as I said, charrettes that we had thousands of community peoples come into. We have those pictures, you know, with all the students from Edison, King Elementary, Carver, Edison Computech, all the principals, the pastoral alliances. Those are the people that speak to our community. Those are the people that care about the hearts of our community. Yes, Chairman Vane, every day we speak to the community. I just left my mother in bed at 107 West Myers on 4.5 liters of nasal due to congestive heart failure and COPD. We've been part of this community for over 65 years. And that's my commitment, that we've put a project in our community that's going to take care of our community for the decades to come and literally an infinite future for our children there. I can't share with this commission within this time period all the benefits and values that our population is going to experience because of the Southwest Specific Plan and that particular Martin Luther King Magnet Core West Creek Village development. Yes, sir, absolutely. You know,
Thank you.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
community is what we living for. That's what I'm here for. That's why I came back home. That's why you guys see a $400 million project in Southwest Fresno, which none of you could have possibly imagined before now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Question is, so if we're developing 21 new homes, do you guys have like a breakdown of, individual breakdown of how you guys are actually going to meet the total number of 481 at all, or is that still in the works too?
Great question, Chairman Vane. Absolutely. You know, this is a master plan project, and as we go forward working with the home builders, we've already now, through this particular modification, been able now to project our additional units. So yes, we do have our additional multifamily units on deck in design mode right now, construction design mode. And yes, we are keeping right at making sure that we fulfill our obligation under that particular clause in the development agreement of that 481 units. Tremendous multifamily project that we have on the table, addressing the housing needs of our community, low income, affordable, multifamily units is what we're bringing in. Yes, sir, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Any commissioners with any questions? All right, none. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we'll open this up to public comment. We will now go out to the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment in favor? So this is going to be in favor of the application. If you are on Zoom online, please use the raise hand function, or if you're calling in, please dial *9. And again, this is for in favor of the application. Do we have any online?
Not at this time.
Okay. None in the chambers. We'll move to public comments in opposition of the application, whether you're on the chambers or if you're on Zoom. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. If you're calling in, please dial *9. If you're in the chambers, please step up to the podium, state your name and your address. And you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Diane Smith. I live at 1540 West La Sierra Drive, just west of Chandler Airfield. I think the problem that's being ignored here is this. You're talking about the building of those homes, you're talking about the city college thing, but what you're not looking at is a total picture. Each one of those is a catalyst. It's only the beginning of what's going to happen with Southwest Fresno. There are people that are saying that people like me don't want improvements in our community. I've been screaming for community improvement for generations. So to say that nobody understands it, I can tell you this. Every time you talk to somebody within the city or any of the projects, the first thing they want to do is focus only on their project. But they don't understand that when you affect one part of the community, you affect all of the community. There's paperwork indicating that there's going to be widening of the streets, and I don't see how it's going to be done only on the city college property or on their property. It's got to take other people's property. So when you're saying, I got to focus on mine, I'm focusing on the entire community. When you're saying that you only need to notice people within 1,000 yards or 1,000 feet of the project area, you're doing a disservice to our community, because everything that happens is a domino effect, and it will affect each and every person in Southwest Fresno. The community meetings that were held, a lot of people didn't know about them because they didn't get the information. And when we did find out about it, they're saying, oh, Southwest Fresno specific plan is different from this plan. It's different from this plan. But when you look at it in its totality, it's the entire Southwest Fresno. So you can't go forward and say, this is what we're going to do, and then later, because something else has happened, things change. The city of Fresno in their development code is saying now that everything has to conform. The homes that they're going to be building over there, and we were told around the 300,000 price range, which is not affordable for many people, is not compatible to the homes that are going to be right next to it. So what's going to happen to those homes?
I have a question for you really quick. Have you had any conversations with your representative in that area, Councilmember Arias?
Oh, yes. And we spoke with Mr. Shahadi several times, and so this is nothing new. This has been ongoing. In the notification, when we met with Mr. Shahadi, he said he's not responsible for the cities of Fresno inability to notice people. And that's one of the biggest peeves, is that people aren't notified. As my understanding, when they came last week, there was only one person that I knew of that got noticed, and that person actually lived maybe within the 1,000 feet or whatever it is, but there was another person that lived right there and never got noticed.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals who want to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address.
My name is Brunette Harris, and I'm with the Heat for Southwest Fresno community. Now, there's been a lot of talk from Sylvester when he said about the workshop. In your Southwest Fresno specific plan, they states that they only had 3 community workshops. That was in October 2015, September 2015, February 2016, approximately 125 to 70 to 60 people respectively. So when you get to 1,000, I don't know where you get that from. And so when you talk about Rod, when he got up here, he didn't show you the next one that they're proposing. One of them was in 2019, is the one that he showed you. But he didn't show you the one in 2021. When you're adding commercial on the end of those streets, you're adding traffic. When you're adding housing, apartments, we talked to Shahadi. He don't even know how much they cost. We are a blighted area. We can't afford $1,200, anything above $1,000 in our community. They built something on Annandale, we don't even have access to it. It costs too much. You're talking about widening streets. This is one Magna Core, and they can have another Magna Core out by 180. You have two Magna Cores in our community. You have to widen those streets in order to accommodate things that they're talking about doing. You put in theaters, gas station, everything in that small area. Walnut is a two-way street, and you barely can get down the street. You have to widen that street. You have community living on that street. What they're doing, they're gentrifying our community. They did not notify us. They're calling us the stupidest people in the state of California. That's in their paperwork. They say we don't even have the ability and the knowledge to think for our health, eating and anything else. This is an insult. We want improvement in our neighborhood. We want to be included. They wouldn't have took this across town. When you talk about TCC dollars was slated for West Fresno alone due to our air pollution. We are the second in the United States of America with bad air. They took those dollars and did something else with it. We wasn't included in that. And this is what we've been complaining about. We complained to Jennifer. Nobody seemed to be concerned. We're going to be out of our community. We're going to be out of our community due to this plan. We wanted to meet with you, but they were saying you wasn't available. You guys really need to look at this Southwest Fresno specific plan. It is an insult. This junk been going on since 1969, which is in this book. They amended it in 2010, but they want to tell us they included us. That is a lie.
Again, I'm going to ask you the question too. Have you had communications with your representative, Councilmember Arias?
We had communication with him before he ran for office. He stated to us he read this book, and it is gentrification. He hasn't held a meeting in Southwest Fresno since he's been in office. He's trying to hold one now with the budget, but he hasn't.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have any other speakers in opposition? Again, please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Bobby Parks. I live in West Fresno. I'm with Heat. Sylvester, I'm not going to repeat what Brunette and Diane has already, because they have made that perfectly clear. But Sylvester was going through this, how long he'd been here and all that stuff. Well, my mother brought us here in '62. So that means I've been here over 50-some years. So don't come with this how long you've been in our community and all this stuff. My thing is that he spoke about how many people came to the meetings and the charrettes and all of that. It took us from when they began this charrette at Gaston, none of the people had any notifications or whatsoever. Just chosen ones, what they had picked steering committees and stuff of that sort. And we hadn't heard anything about it in over a year and a half. They had been having, I think, 14 meetings. But to make a long story short, at that point, I think they started in 2017. Three of us, we said the community has to know about this. We spent 2.5 years from 2017 to 2019, just before the pandemic hit. We walked the entire West Fresno community putting out flyers from North Avenue all the way to 180. We covered the whole West Fresno. We were meeting on Saturday, one Saturday out of a month. And the people were just shocked because they had no knowledge of what was going on. Sylvester need to stop all his, whatever he wants to call it. But what is going to happen is going to gentrify our community. And these community people did not know what was going on. There was no flyers or no indication of what was going on. So this charrette and all this stuff, hey, they can call it whatever they want to. But it is about gentrification.
Thank you, Miss. Do we have any other who want to speak in opposition of this issue? Please state your name and address. And again, you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Emily Brandt, and I live at 3335 West McKinley Avenue, so I do not live in 93706, but I do live in West Central Fresno. My comment concerns a meeting we had recently with Mr. Tackett. Our discussion centered on this amendment, which we found his explanation as valiant an effort as he made to explain how this development agreement with Sylvester Hall and Mr. Shahady, he calls it the master plan, West Creek Master Plan Community, or Village, I guess, is not a part of what was agreed upon in the West Fresno, Southwest Fresno specific plan, nor is it reflected exactly per se in the development agreement. So this amendment, where does it fall? Is it part of the master plan? How are we as a community supposed to be educated at a charrette that presents this West Creek Village Master Plan when the city did not approve that? Now, you may not know what I'm talking about because I'm trying to reflect this conversation that we had with Will Tackett in his attempt to explain this. But he was advised by the city attorney that there was a distinction between what was presented by Sylvester Hall and Jim Shahady to the public and what was agreed to in this development plan. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else in the chambers who want to speak in opposition of this issue? Anyone online? If you're online, please raise your hand. If you're
No hands at this time.
Okay. If you're dialing by phone, please dial *9. All right. So I'm going to close public comments. Let's please have the applicant come up and provide any rebuttal.
Thank you, commissioners and staff. With respect to the whole technical description of rebuttal, this work is about the people of Southwest Fresno and the community. We all realize that planning is very technical. Policies and procedures have to be followed. The city requires it, you require it. This project's been before the commission on 3 previous occasions and we've passed unanimously. It's been before the council on 3 previous occasions with the original development permit and the DA and the subsequent amendment to allow State Center to develop their own project and development agreement with the city. And the city council passed it 3 times unanimously. So that's 21 15-0, and we're back before you once again in total compliance. As we stated earlier, the whole focus about the Southwest Pacific Plan and the West Creek Village Development Project is all about the transformation and revitalization of Southwest Fresno. And you all know what that is about. And so I support all my fellow community advocates. I have nothing contrary to say towards any objections that have been shared tonight by any opposition. I extend my arm and heart and love to all the folks that are concerned about their communities. And we're just so excited that this is another step forward and really bringing to pass what we've promised. As I looked at my community in 1977 when I was at San Diego State, and just seeing it go down every year since then, I knew that God had prepared me to come back home. No one else could come back home and put this kind of project in Southwest Fresno. That's why you hear my friend, my relative, that lady speaking out lives in my first cousin's house rent-free, and I can't speak against that. It's about helping this community get the resources it needs. Southwest Fresno, you guys know its condition. And so the only thing I have a covenant with God is to come back and help fulfill my covenant with him. So I just want to thank you guys. There's no rebuttal. There's just a tremendous amount of hard work ahead of us to continue to do. We got to finish, thank God State Center's taking the lead on the college. It'll be opening next year. We're in our final design work with the city on the park. We have our home builder in place. We have a neighborhood commercial tenants now starting to come in, and we're going to be moving towards our regional commercial components to make sure that we're able to give people a place to shop in their communities. They don't have to go across town to be able to buy basic needs. So just thank you once again. Look forward to working with this commission, the city, the council, and the community. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. The only thing I'd add is that we've always met with anybody who's wanted to speak to us. We will continue to meet with anybody that wants to speak to us, pro or con. We believe fully in the project, and we're unabashed supporters of this master plan. So as the individual projects of this master plan come before the commissioner, we will be up again, and we will meet with anybody in the city to talk about this project. So anytime, any place, anywhere. And thank you guys for your work.
Thank you. Do we have any commissioners who have any final questions for staff or the applicant? Thank you. Just have a question for the staff. With our decision, if we decide to move forward with staff's recommendations, next step is going to be City Council, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. So I'll go ahead and close the hearing for now. Any commissioners want to make any comments or go ahead and make any motions?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Kreiner. I'm a little torn, honestly, because of the amount of conversation from our community and the passion that's within that. So I'm torn on which way I'm going when you do cast that ask for our vote. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm very torn right now.
Commissioner Kleiner, to be candid with you, I feel exactly the same way that you do. I think ultimately, we as a community, the power of the local politics is the fact that we can make a change, right? We have an influence. There's a kind of going back to the Golden State Warriors, right? Strength in numbers. But I think it's, to me, if we move forward with staff's recommendations, I do strongly encourage any individual who has any kind of questions to reach out to your representative. That's the reason why they are in office. They're supposed to represent you, okay? So I do encourage you to reach out to them. Reach out to them, have a conversation with them. But that's my 2 cents, that's my input. Do we have any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Hardy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate all the community comments, and I thank everybody for coming. I would like to make a motion to approve staff's recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hardy. Do we have a second? I'll go ahead and second with the intent of any individuals to go ahead and encourage them to have a conversation with the representative and have a conversation with the applicant. So we have a motion by Commissioner Hardy, a second by Chair Vang. Please take vote.
Commissioner Crainer?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
Chair Vang?
Yes. Motion passes. Next item is ID 22721. This is for hearing to consider proposed development agreement between the City of Fresno and Park West Development relating to the development of the Park West project in Council District 1. We'll go ahead and first start up with city staff presentation.
Chair Vang, Commission members, Will Tackett, Planning and Development Department. Before you this evening is a proposed development agreement between the City of Fresno and Park West Development, Inc. Park West project area pertains to approximately 160 acres of land located west of North Grantland Avenue and between the West Ashland and West Gettysburg Avenue alignments. It's an aerial photograph of the subject property. We have Central High and the Glacier Middle School campuses to the east, rural residential to the north, and ag land to the south and the west of the subject property presently. Subject property is planned and zoned for medium-density residential as well as a commercial corner at the northwest corner of Ashland and Grantland for community commercial. This project did come before this Planning Commission previously with an environmental impact report to evaluate the development of the subject property with up to 844 single-family residential units, along with a minimum 2-acre park. That was accompanied by a plan amendment and rezone to modify the major street circulation element of the general plan as well as the trails element. So this plan for the Park West area did include the minimum 2-acre open space park that you can see shaded in the exhibit. It has a system of internal connecting trails as well as the Class 1 trail along the west side of Grantland Avenue. And it also incorporates what you see up there as a loop road, a collector street, which was designated under the general plan. On January 28, 2021, the council certified the EIR for the Park West project and approved the amendment to the general plan and the rezoning of the property as well. On January 28th, the council also approved the first 2 tentative maps within this subdivision located immediately west of Grantland Avenue at the northeastern quadrant of the property. Those were maps 6212 and 6276, 187 single-family lots. On December 1st, the City Planning Commission approved the third phase, tract 6350, another 73 single-family residential lots at the central section of the quarter section. And then on March 2nd, 2022, this Planning Commission approved tract 6378 and 6387, a 75 single-family residential lot and a 149 single-family residential lot subdivision, again, filling out the quarter section that is the subject of the Park West development project. In addition, we have 2 additional tentative maps which have been submitted but not yet accepted for processing. Those are vesting tentative tract map 6362 and 6388. With those maps, the majority of the quarter section will have been planned for residential development in accordance and under the umbrella of the EIR. The proposed development agreement before you today is for purposes of facilitating the Park West development project. It includes a 15-year term in which the maps approved within the project would be vested, and under which vested rights would be provided for fees. Those fees are subject to schedules included within the development agreement. They are also subject to annual adjustments based upon the 20 City Cost Construction Index. Vested rights provided for within the development agreement would last for the entire 15-year term of the agreement, or in accordance with the provisions of the Subdivision Map Act, California Government Code, whichever is greater. So if we do have future maps submitted later in the process and the Subdivision Map Act would extend vested rights beyond the term of this agreement, then the California Government Code provisions of the Map Act would apply. The DA also outlines the exactions or improvement requirements for the Park West development project area. Those are represented through the conditions of approval for the respective tentative maps, as well as within the conditions of zoning, which were refined by the City Council with their action in January of 2021. This project area was a component of what was originally the West Lake project. At that point in time, conditions of zoning were adopted for the future development, assuring certain off-site improvements, public improvements for that project. With these conditions of zoning as refined by the council, they were made specific to the Park West plan. So those conditions of zoning run with the land. They are adopted by ordinance. And this development agreement basically represents and references those applicable exactions or improvement requirements, as well as the timing for those requirements. The development agreement also specifies the timing for the 2-acre park, as well as the terms for the amenities to be included. Again, it needs to be a minimum 2-acre size to qualify for any credits or reimbursements. At minimum, it is required to include a tot lot, a dog park, sports facilities. Applicant has proposed a 5-a-side soccer field, a half-court basketball, as well as some pickleball courts, benches, turf, passive and active open space areas. The timing of the development agreement would ensure that the neighborhood park, as well as the internal trails that were part of that Park West plan, and which would connect the individual neighborhoods to the neighborhood park, would be developed and operational no later than 12 months following occupancy of 240 units. The development agreement also specifies terms for the application of fee credits and or reimbursements. It also includes provisions for the establishment of a community facilities district. Now this property can annex into existing community facilities districts for maintenance or essentially establish its own under this development agreement. If a new CFD is adopted for this, independent of city's existing, it may also include terms for enhanced public safety services. That could be police personnel, fire personnel, to supplement that personnel which is provided for under general funding. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council based upon the development agreement as drafted and prepared and provided within your staff report. And we are asking that you recommend approval to the City Council of the addendum to the environmental impact report that is also attached to your staff report. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available to field any questions the Commission may have.
Thank you, Will. We have any questions from commissioners? Thank you. Next, I invite the applicant to present.
Good evening, Chair Vang and members of the Planning Commission. Doris Sesemi with Granville Homes, representing Park West Development, 1396 West Herndon. We concur with staff recommendation. We just have, three. By the way, I'm here along with Drew Phelps, our entitlement manager, who will be speaking as well. Just three items that we want to bring to your attention that we are still negotiating with staff, and we hope to have it resolved by the time we get to City Council, hopefully next week. So we're attempting to build a 844-unit master plan community west of 99. This project is modeled after several of our projects in Northeast Fresno, which is Copper River Ranch, and North Clovis. And we're trying to really change the dynamic of what's happening west of 99, bring in a variety of products, apartments, commercial, single-family homes, with a very nicely amenitized trail system, walkable communities, and a gorgeous 2-acre park. So the challenge we've had so far, and I'm going to actually go back for a minute. As of late last year, we were in agreement with all the points of the development agreement. And unfortunately, over the last few months, there's been disagreements between us and the city in three specific areas. Number one is the park. We want to build basically a similar park to what we have built in Northeast Fresno at Copper River Ranch. This development at full build-out will pay close to $3.6 million in park impact fees to the city of Fresno. We've met with several folks, constituents in the area, that live in the area that will be using this park. We've also met with folks that want to purchase out here and give them the options. What kind of a park do you want to see built here? And we've basically narrowed it down to a park that will cost, basically what you saw on the screen is a park that will cost approximately $1.8 million, which is about 50%, half of the amount of money that this subdivision or this master plan community generates. We want to, in park fees, we want to use to build a park that's walkable for the residents of this project and for the neighboring residents that live across the street or elsewhere. From our surveys, we know that most folks want to use a park that's walkable, not necessarily drive 4 or 5 miles to that park. So our ask is, but by the way, this body and councils have adopted development agreements that allow for up to 50% of the park impact fees to be used to build a park that's on site, a public park, again, that can be used by everybody. And you recently actually did that last year on a project, Southwest Fresno. So our ask is the same. Let us build an attractive park with many amenities, walkable, usable, with sports activities. Again, we'll show you a picture as soon as we'll load that up. Basketball court, soccer field, kids play area, etc. If we're not able to get the 50% credit, we would have to strip the park of the soccer field, basketball court, some of the playground area for kids, and the shade area. So become just another park, lots of open space, but not a whole lot of amenities. So our ask is whether this body makes a recommendation to council or the council does, is to allow us, as you have in the past, to use 50% of the money generated by this development to be used for a park for this development and for the neighbors. So that's one issue, is parks. The second is vesting rights. The development agreements that you have approved, including the one you just amended, has vesting rights, which means that, and by the way, why are we doing a development agreement? Because we're developing a 160-acre, 844-unit subdivision. If I was developing a 20-acre site with 100 homes, we wouldn't need a development agreement, but we're taking a big risk. We're putting in close to $28 million of infrastructure improvements up front, and we're building that as we speak. So we want some guarantees from the city that, as we're not building a cookie-cutter subdivision, we're master planning, building 844 units of, some commercial apartments and a variety of densities of product. We want some guarantees that if we're doing this, that we will have vested rights. So as this project develops, that we will pay the fee increases as per city's inflation index, but we don't want to be subjected to new fees. We're taking a big risk and a big gamble. Again, $28 million of just infrastructure cost, not the land cost, not the home cost. So we want to have our rights vested for the duration of the development agreement. And it's something you've done just most recently, including the one you just adopted in Southwest Fresno. The third item is a little bit more complicated. It's an indemnity agreement. It's a legal term that it's a release of liability between the city of Fresno and this project. It impacts every development in the city of Fresno. We're simply asking, let me actually back up. The city is asking us to indemnify the city against all claims into perpetuity, which means what? We're going to build 4 traffic signals based on the city's requirements of where they should go, based on a traffic study that the consultant is doing. So if somebody 20 years from now runs a traffic light and hits another car or hits a pedestrian, and there's a lawsuit against the city, we would have to indemnify the city against that litigation. And we simply can't purchase insurance that goes into perpetuity. So we've asked the city to basically allow us to, we will indemnify the city and hold the city harmless during course of construction. We're basically using the city's standards on street widths, traffic signal, sidewalks, so on and so forth. And we will indemnify the city during course of construction, but not beyond that. But I can say that those negotiations are still ongoing between the Building Industry Association and the city of Fresno, because this, again, impacts every subdivision. Every subdivision is going through the same indemnity. And most builders have discovered that we just can't buy insurance to cover that. I'm not even sure, what is the legal term? Is it conscionable to actually enforce a language like that? And let me also say that our EIR, when the EIR was getting adopted, we had a different indemnity language. That we just prefer to have that language. And we've been negotiating with the city attorney's office, with the city manager's office, with staff, and we haven't come to an agreement on that. We simply cannot agree to the current indemnity language. I mean, at that point, it's just not worth even having a development agreement because it puts our company at risk. Our entire company could be jeopardized by signing that agreement. Let me add one more thing. If anybody would be able to get insurance coverage, it's going to be the big builders that have lots of bonding capacity, lots of balance sheet dollars. So this, the smaller developer that builds, 20 or 30 homes a year just simply won't have the ability to get that kind of an insurance. We're actually asking our insurance company, can insurance be purchased to cover something like this into perpetuity? And the first answer is no. How can you insure against something into perpetuity? And then furthermore, the question is, why should we have the risk somebody runs a red light or runs a stop sign? And I understand City of Fresno gets sued frequently on that, but we believe that this is something that should not be we should not be burdened with that liability into perpetuity. So those are the three issues. We want to build a first-class project, which is under development. We're grateful to work with a great staff that has helped us navigate through this subdivision. You approved it over a year ago. It's under development. A lot of money has been spent, and we want to continue to spend more dollars. We just want to build a subdivision west of 99 that it will hopefully change the landscape in that part of town and build something very attractive and make it a destination. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. A copy of our red lines, I have 2 copies with me that I'd like to submit for the record. I'd be glad to answer any questions before Drew Phelps.
Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
I had a question for staff. Are we able to make those recommendations, or are we just looking at what's in front of us today? Just curious.
This staff is not able to comment on matters of legal indemnification or insurance or risk. Our recommendation to you today is based upon what you have in your staff report and the terms included within the draft development agreement as attached to your report.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
On your screen, by the way, is a colored version of what this subdivision will look like. This master plan community, you can see the commercial, the multifamily, the park that's attached to the multifamily, and the loop road, the trail system. I don't think, yeah, we can, no, that doesn't quite work. The east-west trail system and a north-south trail system that connects to the park, and that's the park that we would like to build, and which takes about roughly in today's dollars, $1.8 million out of the $3.6 million fees generated by this community.
Mr. Simi, with the park itself, in the staff report, we're looking at a minimum of 2 acres. Is this going to be in the 2-acre range too, or?
Yeah, this is this is exactly 2 acres. But what we'd have to do if we can't get the 1.8. The original design was actually 2.4 million. That's based on feedback from neighbors on what they wanted in this park. So, when we talk to staff, they said, the numbers that we have to reimburse you is about 1.4. So we're $1 million apart. So we went back and stripped it to some extent, took some of the play structures out, the shade structures, and we've come up with this design. To get it to the 1.4, we would have to get rid of the soccer field, basketball court, bocce ball, and one of the play structures, and several of the shade structures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Vang, Commissioners. My name is Drew Phelps, representing Granville Homes, 1396 West Herndon. Just to add a little bit of background to that point specifically about the park and a little bit of history. So, as Darius mentioned, it was previously included in the agreement up until about December of 2021, January of this year, language that the park, originally at the $2.4 million point, the plan would be submitted to the city engineer and would be, some sort of negotiation, basically looking at that cost and whether it was appropriate for the city to reimburse in that amount. That was where we came down from the 2.4 million to the 1.8. And then, unfortunately, as Darius mentioned, at the beginning of this year, that language, after being in agreement for 6 months or so, was changed to put a cap on the amount that's less than the rights that other development agreements have enjoyed. So that's one concern, as Darius laid out. In addition to that, we do have concerns about vesting rights, particularly in relation to a clause that was added in the agreement as recently as last Friday in regards to vehicle miles traveled or VMT fees. That had never been discussed or considered in the agreement before. What we had agreed to make sure that the city is made whole in terms of updates to fees was the concern from staff that basically within the next few years, there's state law that mandates a change to the nexus studies for how fees are calculated. And so we were in agreement that, any nexus study, any new fee based on that update that has a tie to an existing fee, whether it's a lot more, a lot less, because it's going to be calculated a different way, we're open to accepting that. We understand that we need to pay our fair share and that the fees that are already in existence should be paid. So we're not concerned about any updates to existing fees, but we are concerned that new fees, particularly fees like VMT that still have yet to be established, amounts yet to be agreed upon or considered in a nexus study, may be imposed upon this development. And so that's just a burden that would be very difficult to bear. And in addition to that, this project, the EIR, as was mentioned, was approved or was published, the draft EIR was published prior to that state law requiring VMT to be considered. So this project, throughout its entirety, has been, you could say VMT exempt. And so it's really concerning to see new language added that basically goes against our understanding and our agreement prior to that. We had a couple other small issues that Darius didn't mention. He mentioned the 3 big points. There was another section of language that was added in as recently as last Friday regarding CFD for public safety. That's actually something that we had requested as a part of the original proposal for this development agreement. And what we had requested was just flexibility. We want folks in our neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods to be as safe as possible. And so we were willing to at least explore the possibility of putting an extra CFD tax on the homeowners within the Park West development. The new language that was added in last Friday doesn't allow for that flexibility. It actually mandates us to establish a public safety CFD or join an existing public safety CFD, which we feel very uncomfortable agreeing to, seeing as that hasn't even been studied in terms of what the cost to our future homeowners may be. And so we're in favor of the concept, but we just want the flexibility to be able to explore that moving forward rather than being required to establish that CFD. Another smaller detail is regarding right-of-way acquisition. There's a small section that basically, in our reading, requires that any right-of-way that must be acquired that we as the developer cannot require for required public infrastructure and is turned over to the city, whether it's for condemnation or other acquisition. If the city cannot make that acquisition within a timely manner, we would, from our legal counsel's perspective, be put under a moratorium where we can't pull building permits, even if it's not our requirement or responsibility to acquire that right-of-way, if that responsibility has been handed over to the city. And so it's difficult for us to accept that when we do feel, from our legal counsel's perspective, that it violates the Subdivision Map Act, but also that we would be essentially placed under a moratorium that's outside of our control. So those are some smaller concerns that we hope to have worked out. And then in addition, just would like to mention that we're not here asking for, everything that we can get our hands on. Throughout this process, as Darius, I believe, mentioned, it's been about a year process, started last June. We've made multiple concessions, and just to name a few, the timing of water well reimbursements, there is a water well associated with this project, control over the phasing of the maps, which areas were to be included to satisfy open space standards, and the timing requirement of park construction, among some others. And so I don't mention that to go back and rehash those points. We're in agreement on that. We've negotiated and put those to rest. But I just bring it up to basically say that, we've been willing to compromise throughout this process. We're not asking for everything under the sun, and what we're asking for is just some ability to go and make our case before council. And so we're asking for recommendation to basically approve the agreement with the caveat that those are still issues that are being worked out, and we would like to see council weigh in on those. So that's our request, and appreciate the time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from commissioners? I do staff with Will. do you have any responses in regards to the concerns that they're bringing up or the revisions that they would like to make?
Well, as the applicant mentioned, we have been back and forth on a number of these terms. I think it is important to note that this development can be developed without a development agreement. Okay, so this is a proposal by the applicant group to vest rights for a term of 15 years. There are provisions currently under state law, the California Government Code, in which they could format this project to vest their rights for 10 years. They're asking for 15. There are provisions within the government code that they can ask for discretionary extensions. But they are asking for a development agreement to vest these terms for a period of 15 years. With respect to the VMT provisions, we all understand that that is a later addition under California law and how we consider traffic impacts, and that it has some relation to air impacts and emissions. This is a project at the boundary of our sphere of influence that will accommodate a large number of residential units. The provisions of the development agreement as drafted would still vest them under the provisions of the MAP Act, but beyond the term of the MAP Act, it would require them to pay a VMT impact fee if adopted at that time. So basically, the provisions as drafted by staff would require the payment of that fee only beyond the terms of the provisions of the MAP Act, but not for the full 15-year term of the agreement. With respect to the off-site acquisitions, it is staff's position that those are requirements of mitigation for CEQA purposes. They are also conditions of zoning, again, adopted by ordinance by the City Council. Our intent with the development agreement is simply to reserve the right to state that if you build the number of units that would otherwise trigger a significant impact, that you provide for the mitigation of that impact. And if we are unable because of an inability to acquire the off-sites, we have the ability to negotiate or consider alternative mitigation to that and or pay fees in lieu. So it leaves that option open as is currently stated under the mitigation measures of the EIR.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. All right, so now I'll go ahead and open this to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment in favor of the application that are in the chambers? If you're a member of the public on Zoom and would like to comment on an item, please use the raise hand function, or if you are calling in, dial *9. Anyone inside the chambers? Anyone online, please raise your hand. Do we have anyone online? I see none.
Not at
raising-
this time.
None, okay. Next, we'll go ahead and we'll open this up to the public comment in opposition of the application. If you are in the chambers, please step up to the podium, state your name, address. If you're a member of the public on Zoom and would like to comment on the item, please use the raise hand function. If you're calling in, dial *9. We have none. We'll go ahead and, well, the applicant, do you have any rebuttal?
Thank you, Chair. The right-of-way issue that Will brought up is the development of Veterans Boulevard south of Shaw. So we know that Veterans is getting built, from Herndon all the way down to Shaw Avenue. This project is burdened by building Veterans Boulevard south of Shaw. Parts of it at 450 permits and the balance of it at 650 permits. And the challenge, and there's right-of-way to be purchased from other property owners directly to the northeast of us. And we've been negotiating with those property owners for over a year, and it's possible. We believe we can probably get to a point where we can acquire their property. There's not a really financial burden. It's just because the city reimburses 100% for that cost. By the way, I wish the city would have built Veterans all the way down to its final termination, which is Grantland Avenue. But we're burdened with that. The challenge for us becomes is we have to have part of it opened at 450th building permit. But that right-of-way has to be acquired before we can build part of Veterans Boulevard south of Shaw. And if the property owner is not willing to sell it at an appraised value, The only other option is to condemn the property. But we don't have that right to condemn the property. Only the city of Fresno does. So the question becomes, if the city of Fresno decides not to condemn the property and buy that property for Veterans Boulevard, then we're stuck. So we can't pull any more building permits. Housing supply will shrink at Park West. So we're just simply asking, can we not have that onus on us, burden on us? If city is not willing to use eminent domain to purchase the property, we shouldn't be burdened by having basically what Drew said, a de facto moratorium. Now, we've talked to staff, and they say, well, if you can't buy that property, we can reroute traffic through other options to get people around Veterans Boulevard, which is doable, but substantially more difficult. But so we're in a position where we can't control the outcome, but we have the burden of the requirement of the outcome. The city has to decide to initiate an eminent domain. So that's one of the items. In terms of, Will is correct. We don't have to have a development agreement. However, the development agreement does two things. It gives the development and the home building community a guarantee that project of this size, we're going to have some guarantees from the city. So we can actually do our financial modeling up front. What is this thing going to cost 5 and 7 years from now? If we don't have that certainty, by the way, we won't be building 844 unit, 10+ year projects. We'll cut this up into 10 acre segments, because we know the 10 acre segment we can develop, sell the homes, and move on to the next. But you won't have a beautiful neighborhood like the master plan community that we have in front of you. So, and we've built many projects in the past without development agreements, and we've realized halfway through that the financial model actually just doesn't work. So to make it work, we have to make projections into the future, and we want some stability on where the cost is going to be. So that's the purpose of the development agreement. And if we can't have those, then developers like us will be looking at not building larger projects. We would just do cookie cutter small projects. Again, this body approved 2 last year in West Fresno. I'd be glad to answer any other questions you may have.
Do we have any questions from commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and bring it back to the commissioners. Do we have any commissioners with comments or any motions? I will make a comment. Last thing I want to do is hold the entire project up or hold this item up. I do encourage, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys just received this DA last week or so too, with some revisions. Next step is going to be for the city council to vote on this, correct, Will? So I don't want to hold this thing up. Want to go ahead and recommend, go with staff's recommendations as is, with the encouragement of Mr. Simi to have conversations with the city. So that's going to be my motion, to go ahead and approve staff's recommendations. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So,
I'll second.
okay. So we have an initial by me and a second by Commissioner Diaz. Please take vote.
Commissioner Crainer,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Chair Vang.
Yes, motion passes. All right. Time's at 8 o'clock. All right, next up we have we're going to have workshops. ID 22719. Workshop is going to be on the Housing Element 2021 Annual Progress Report with public comment.
There we go.
Thank you, Chair Vang, members of the Commission. I'm Sophia Pagalatis with the Planning and Development Department, and I'm very excited to be here to provide workshops this evening. And I provided two, so I wanted the one with about 17 slides or so, the shorter one, I think, for housing element. That's the one. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to begin this evening with a workshop on the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for 2021. And do I have a clicker? Looks like I do. That's great. And just to give you a little bit of background on the housing element, it is one of several required elements of the city's general plan. And it is the only one that requires certification by a state agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development. It also has special timelines, so housing elements need to be updated every 8 years. The city's current housing element was, the time period is 2015 to 2023, so we're pretty well along in this cycle, and we're preparing for our next one. So that is a little overview of housing elements. Their purpose is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing for all residents of Fresno, which is a very broad goal. And the housing element then includes data and projections and programs that help the city arrive at safe, decent, and affordable housing for all. So one of the requirements of our housing element is that we provide these annual reports, and so this is the 2021 report. It is available online, and we do have hard copies available on request. And the housing element is structured around 5 main objectives. The first one is to provide adequate land for housing. The second one is to facilitate the production of affordable housing. And that's keeping in mind that the city is not a developer, but the city is definitely a facilitator who can partner and secure resources to promote affordable housing. The third objective is the removal of government constraints to housing. The fourth is conservation of our existing housing stock. And the fifth objective is to promote equal housing opportunity. So those are the main objectives in the housing element. And then there are 28 different programs that specifically try to implement those. And tonight I'm just going to give you highlights of those programs and what progress has been made in 2021. So we're going to start out with land for housing. And this is a topic that can get really complex really quickly, but we're just going to start out with some acronyms. You've probably heard of the RHNA, which is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And what this is a zoning capacity requirement in which each city actually must provide a certain amount of land zoned properly to accommodate a given number of housing units through that 8-year planning period. So the current cycle that we are in, our current housing elements, RHNA, is 23,565 housing units of capacity. We have to plan to accommodate that many housing units in this 8-year cycle. And the state also stipulates that those units that the capacity needs to accommodate different affordability levels, as you can see on the slide. And the way that the affordability levels are planned for is with density. So for example, to plan for those 5,666 units that would be affordable to extremely or very low income households, the property that's set aside for that needs to be zoned at 30 units to the acre or higher. And the densities are related to each of the income levels. However, once the housing gets built, it only can only be counted as affordable housing if it is actually covenanted affordable. So a lot of requirements around that, but I am pleased to say that the city does have the land capacity, and housing construction has been occurring over the life of the housing element, and this is a summary that you see here. So you see those RHNA numbers in the left-hand light blue column, and then across the top you see this is building permits issued for housing units across these several years of our housing cycle. So just in big picture numbers, our RHNA was 23,565 units, and currently we've constructed almost 14,000 units, or almost 14,000 units permits have been issued. And we still have adequate land capacity to accommodate the rest. So that's what the state looks at. We also now, there are new requirements, and they require that we not only track permits issued, but we track every level of the entitlement process. So we need to now track how many projects are submitted for entitlements, how many got approved, how many building permits got issued, and then finally how many units got constructed. And it kind of looks like an inverted funnel at any given time. To give you a summary not just of the permits issued, but of housing units completed in 2021, we have this graphic that breaks it down for you. So 1,714 housing units were constructed in 2021. Of those, 1,241 were single family, 473 were multifamily, and 214 were actually covenanted affordable. So that's the snapshot in time for 2021, and then another 2,262 units were in the pipeline on the right-hand side there you see. So that just kind of gives you a snapshot of the housing production in 2021. To show you where the units are, we have this map, which is easier to see if you actually have the document in your hand. But this shows you the number of units that were in the application process. And the yellow is single family, the blue are multifamily, and the ones with the little red ring around them are covenanted affordable, so you can kind of see that. And then just to contrast that to the actual constructed units, which you can see are fewer because there's always more in the pipeline. Now just highlighting some of the projects and collaborations that have occurred over the last year. One of the ones we wanted to point out is the Link project, which is on Blackstone and McKinley. It's 88 units of affordable housing. It's also a mixed-use project, and it benefited from a development incentive, a density bonus. So because they were building affordable housing, they were able to build more units. So this is one of the ways that the city tries to meet that second objective, which is assisting in the development of affordable housing. Another way that the city tries to facilitate construction of affordable housing is with partnerships. So in the case of that particular project, the developer's name was Integrated Community Development, but there are several other entities, groups, nonprofits, and for-profit companies that we partner with. Also, big news this year was mobile home parks. The city actually assumed responsibility for the permitting and inspection of mobile home parks, where previously that was under the state of California jurisdiction. So now we have more local control, and the city can partner to make sure that mobile home parks can have easier access to making improvements and maintaining that source of affordable housing, that's naturally occurring affordable housing. Another important milestone this year was a focus on displacement, As you're probably aware, an anti-displacement task force was created in 2018, and that was pursuant to a program in the housing element which calls for the study of displacement, identifying if and where it's happening, and then recommending policies to prevent or avoid it. And so the city commissioned a consultant to assist with studying displacement. Recommendations were made by the task force in December, and then those have been forwarded on. We gave a workshop here about that report, and that has also been presented to the council. Also, part of our housing efforts, and this is related to the conservation of existing housing stock, is investing in infrastructure. And so we do use our community development block grant funds to invest in various types of infrastructure, from street improvements to water to parks. And so those are the numbers there. And then to promote equitable communities, that program asks that the city both invest in underinvested neighborhoods and promote affordable housing in high opportunity neighborhoods. And so the city is doing both. The Transformative Climate Communities program is an example of investing in historically underinvested neighborhoods. And then the city does have some of its housing funds set aside to do some affordable housing in high opportunity neighborhoods. So just a little bit about our engagement that we do every year with the annual report. We are required by our housing element to engage the public, make sure that the public has access to this information and they can comment about it, and then have a public hearing in front of the city council. So on March 15th, we did present this information to a regional affordable housing task force. And then on April 26th, we had a remote workshop for anybody who wanted to participate that way. We did do a little survey with the participants of that workshop about which objective was most important to them, and they did choose, not surprisingly, facilitation of affordable housing. That was their number one. And we also have about an 800-member email list that we communicate with, and of course, put a notice in the Bee and did some social media about this to make sure that people are aware and can get this information. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from commissioners? No. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have ID 22718. This is a workshop overview of the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan, which was adopted on October 26, 2017.
So, Sophia, you were expecting public comment?
If there is any, I would.
Sorry, Chair. This item does require public comment, even though it is a workshop. The other one does not, because this was noticed for public comment.
Okay. So going back to.
And there are hands in the chat.
Okay. So going back to ID 22719, do we have any public comments? If you are in the chambers, please come forward, state your name and address. If you are online, please raise your hand.
We have some people online if you'd like.
Yes, please.
I'll do the first one.
Please state your name and your address.
Hello, my name is Ivanka Saunders with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability.
Oh, sorry. Say that again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, no problem. This is Ivanka with Leadership Council, Ivanka Saunders with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. Our address is 2210 San Joaquin Street, Fresno, California. Thank you for the presentation, Sophia. The points that I just wanted to make was that we recognize the efforts that have been made over the last year, like creating the local housing trust fund. but still there's nearly enough to ensure that families remain housed in quality, affordable housing or allow the opportunity to build generational wealth and break the cycle of poverty by purchasing a home. This annual progress report shows no building permits were issued for deed restricted affordable units for extremely low, very low, or low income residents, but it claims that there's 107 non-deed restricted affordable units for extremely low, light, and low income households compared to the 2,262 for the above moderate. So the ones that are in the most need still have the lowest numbers that are getting built, 107 versus 2,200. It's hard to see part of the charts, but one of the main things that's still concern is that are we effectively implementing the housing element programs, or are the housing element programs we have even enough? We're in a housing crisis, and the city and our leaders continue to speak on housing a priority, but there's still not enough actions that are taking place. There's nothing in this annual progress report on Program 10, which is to conduct and publish an assessment of housing-related needs in mobile home parks through communications with residents, owners, identifying city, state, federal, and private resources available to address those needs. So while we did get that passed by City Council, passing it doesn't mean anything if the next step is not taken to actually put that into action of what those action items are for Program 10. And then on Program 27, which is the requirement to rezone in high opportunity areas for affordable housing and direct affordable housing funding, development in those sites, and to include high density in specific planned areas. That's Program 27, and there's still not a lot of actions being done on that one. And then Program 12A states annually gather data on lease rates, vacancy rates, rent burden, rental rates, restricted affordable housing covenant expirations, and that still hasn't been done. So I know what you've stated that has been done, but to me, these are just as crucial and need to be as prioritized as well. And we need to be doing this, especially as we're seeing historical rental rates increasing in the midst of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saunders. You made some wonderful points. Do we have anyone else online who would like to comment on the workshop? Please raise your hand.
Hi, Brandy Diegas. Thank you for the opportunity to make public comment during this time, and for Sophia again for the wonderful presentation and ensuring that this is open to the public to make comments. I really appreciate what Ivanka said, and it echoes some of the things I wanted to say, but in far more depth, and hit a lot of things that I was hoping would be in more detail. So I ask that you take that very, very, go back to what you said and use it. I'm concerned with the numbers regarding development of low-income housing compared to the need, and things like that she's mentioned that aren't being accomplished because of in the face of growing housing needs. And I was really happy. I mentioned I heard this workshop last week, and I was really happy to hear that 120 people access housing in high opportunity areas through vouchers. I would love to see that some more support for expanding that. But as Ivanka said, and I want to really voice, I would ask that the Planning Commission do what you can to ensure and insist that housing for those who are extremely low income, and especially as well specifically those who are unhoused, have housing, that there is housing built for them in high opportunity areas, that developers create high opportunity areas within, within that, as far as amenities, ensuring that they're in places that have good income, that have jobs, resources, schools, for them to be able to thrive, to be able to move forward, that more investment is made towards this housing in this area. As well, I asked that the Plan Commission pursue action to ensure that temporary housing as well is in high opportunity areas, and require that developers do things to make sure that they have the amenities in these areas. I feel like there was something that popped in my head as I was talking, but it slipped out, so hopefully it'll come back. But I definitely would love to be able to see that develop more, and giving people the best location to be and to pursue whatever you can. I asked that you use the Here to Stay report as a guiding star in what would work and what would help, and to access those things. I also asked that the city work with developers of these extremely low housing to make sure that those who are unhoused, know about opportunities such as like when McKinley and Blackstone was being developed. I know people were asking, can I get a room there? I know a lot of people who are on the streets who have like a fixed income, and they're asking me, is there anything available? And to not only provide that, but also to ensure that there is a process in which they know, without having to necessarily just depend on maps, but signage and whatever is deemed best to be able to reach out to them and make these developments more accessible. And I thank you so much for all the work that went into this and for the thorough information. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online who would like to comment on the workshop? I see one individual, Marcia.
Hi, I'm Marcia Vanderpool. I'm wondering how we find out if a property has been slated for RENA. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And go ahead and you can speak, and then what we'll do is we'll have staff address any kind of questions or concerns after all the individuals online have had a chance to speak.
Okay, well, I have some other comments. Are you cutting me off now?
Nope, you're perfectly fine.
Oh,
You had a question, so I
okay.
just wanted to address it.
So I'm all for affordable housing. I am worried about the density topic. There are some complexes being built that don't have enough parking, and they're high dense, and it's already causing some people to move out of their neighborhoods because of the low income housing. And so I think we need to be careful of that for safety. I used to work in a school that was bookended by Section 8 housing, and I teach kindergarten, and we used to have dueling Section 8 houses where there would be drive-bys while my children were walking home from school. And I think we need to look at neighborhoods in a way that we don't put too many in one neighborhood. I'm all about opportunity, but I'm more about safety. And right now, our neighborhood already has one. We're happy to accept them, but I'm online today because of the property at Boulevard and Maroa. And now I'm wondering if we're going to be bookended with Section 8 housing, which would put our neighborhood in danger of possible crime impact. I would like to see a map of crime in Fresno where safety, where low-income housing is mapped with Section 8 and with crime density, so that we can keep the neighborhoods that are already safe continuing to be safe. And we keep the schools safe also, and the children in the neighborhoods. Like I said, I'm all about low-income housing. Yes, let's give them a beautiful place to live. Let's give them not a density place. Let's give them a beautiful place to live. And let's not make it too dense so that we don't have safety issues in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online who would like to comment on the workshops?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do we have staff, Ms. Sophia? We do?
Real quick,
Okay.
I don't think we took
Do we
it.
have
Yeah, I was going to say, we didn't go out to the public in chambers.
I did initially, but we'll go
Oh.
ahead and open up to the chambers again. Anyone in the chambers, please please step forward, state your name and address.
My name is Priscilla Awayo. My address is 252 West Celeste. And it was pertaining your presentation. We have Alegria low or affordable housing apartment complex that's on Barstow and Del Mar, between Del Mar and Blackstone. And I'm here for another concern and public hearing for a rezoning. But the rezoning application is for a property that's behind on Del Mar and Boulevard. And I was just, what my concern is, how many affordable housing can be in one neighborhood? How far apart do they need to be? In case this rezoning allows what is called a multi-unit residential, we don't know what it's going to be zoned for. So I'm here for another application number, but since this came up, it's a concern because that property is 5.5 acres, and I'm just wondering, is there some kind of regulation on how many affordable housing? Mrs. Marcia had said earlier regarding the safety and violence that comes with that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another individual in the chambers. Please step forward, state your name and address.
My name is Josie Almeida, and I also live on Poplar, 5654 North Poplar. I was also here for the Bullard Maroa planning regulation, but in conjunction with the housing, which just came up as well, for the affordable housing. As my neighbor Priscilla just mentioned, we were caught off guard when the affordable housing came into our neighborhood. We welcomed it because we had someone by the name of Phil Ski, who I'm sure you're familiar with, who reached out to us and got the community involved and let us know what was happening. And so we got together as a community and worked together and accepted this. However, there was a concern that prior to that, we were never notified that affordable housing was coming into our community. And just as my other neighbor mentioned, we are more than welcome to accept. But it is nice to make sure that that communication is out there. It is so important because to be brought in after the fact is not a good feeling, and we read the paper all the time. We keep up with all the other issues that are going on in Fresno and also in Clovis. So I'd like to just reiterate, reinforce that communication prior to any changes is the most beneficial to all of us so that we can work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other individuals in the chambers or online who would like to speak?
Marcia is raising her hand again in the audience, if you'd like.
No, we're okay. We're going to go ahead and bring this back to staff.
Oh, there's one more for Annette.
For Annette?
She just
Okay.
raised her hand. Annette,
Not a problem.
yes.
Go ahead and, Annette, please state your name and address.
Annette, you've entered the room. You are on mute.
Annette, please unmute yourself. Annette, if you hear us, please unmute yourself. Right, and then in the time being, do we have anyone else online who is raising their hand?
No.
None, okay. Why don't we, let's go ahead and have staff address any kind of concerns, and Annette, if you're able to unmute yourself, feel free to just raise your hand again, and then we'll let you speak, okay?
There is one more that just raised their hand when Sophia is completed.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and have staff address any concerns, and then we'll go ahead and allow for those two individuals to speak.
Okay, thank you, Chair Vang. What we usually do at this point is all of the public comments that we get on the annual report, we package those and forward them along to the City Council, who will consider this later this month, and then on to the state of California. So if there were any particular questions you wanted us to answer, we can do that. Otherwise, we would take these comments and forward them on.
Okay, do you have, are you able to share your contact information where if anyone has any kind of questions, concerns, they can reach out to an email or a specific contact number?
Yes, perhaps Janice, well, I was going to say maybe she could put it in the chat, but it's sophia.pagalatis@fresno.gov. That is not a very easy name.
Mm-hmm.
It's SOPHIA.pagalatis, PAGOULATOS @fresno.gov.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and let's go back to public comments. Those individuals who are online, please raise your hand. We'll allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Here's the last one.
Thank you.
Peter, you are beautiful. You're a beautiful, beautiful man.
Let's go ahead and cut that off, please.
It is in God we trust, Jesus first.
I do appreciate those compliments. I think my wife would feel the same way, but. Do we have any other comments online?
Chair, I think that's it's your turn now.
Okay, awesome. I do want to make one comment before we go on to the next workshop. Ms. Marshall, she made a comment in regards to reducing, trying to keep those areas safe that are currently safe with low crime rates. But I think the ultimate goal throughout the entire world is to reduce overall crime rates no matter which area you live in. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next workshop. It's ID 22718. It is the overview of the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan adopted on October 26, 2017.
Yeah, so while Sophia's coming up and getting ready for that, I wanted to let the folks in the audience know, item 8A, if you'll notice on the agenda, is a continued matter to May 18th. So I don't want to make you stay through the whole meeting unless you'd like to hear another presentation. Just letting you know that is continued to May 18th. It will not be heard tonight, no.
Thank you, Michael. Again, for the record, Sophia Pagalatis with the Planning and Development Department. And this evening, I'm happy to be able to give you a little background on the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan. So I have the clicker, yes I do. So I'm going to just give you a little background, talk about the level of community engagement that occurred, and give you an overview of the plan and what the implementation priorities were. Also, along the way, I will remind you about what a specific plan is. You probably already are aware of this, but it is sort of like a child of a general plan. It is a plan, a land use plan that covers a more specific area within the city, and it needs to address infrastructure and land use related issues that are relevant to that particular area and the people that live in that area. So that is what we embarked upon in 2015. And of course, the community, you know, the city had just adopted a general plan in 2014. So this opportunity to do a specific plan in Southwest Fresno was to further refine the policies that were established in the general plan. And of course, funding was secured for that, and PlaceWorks was the main consultant that worked with staff on the Southwest Fresno specific plan. So the level of community engagement that occurred was actually pretty broad and robust, I would say. There was a steering committee, 21-member steering committee, that met 17 times during the course of the planning process, which, by the way, was from spring of 2015 to fall of 2017, about 2.5 years. There were actually 6 community workshops, 3 at the beginning of the planning process and 3 at the end. And during the process, the city staff did mailings to everyone in the plan area and beyond at least 3 times, and continued with other outreach methods. We had 10 small group, topic group meetings. We had a community office in the project area for a time, and then we also scheduled 3 community conversations. So a lot of outreach throughout the process. And this slide just shows you how it was divided up into the first phase, which was drafting alternatives, and then the second phase was drafting the actual specific plan. We had outreach, of course, in both of those phases. And this is just telling you the methods that we used, the ones you might expect, and also really trying to work through community networks and try to reach as far as we could with different mediums. So we used radio spots and, of course, kept our website going and tried to reach churches and community institutions in the project area. So the plan, first of all, I'm sure you're all well aware of the geography of the plan, but here is the photo, the image showing you how it sort of fits right into where the downtown neighborhoods community plan leaves off. So it's the area with the little orange dots. That is the Southwest Fresno specific plan area. And the first thing that was done with the community was to really focus on what should be the guiding principles of the plan. And so there were 6 of them. With regard to housing, it was provide a mix of housing, but focusing on single-family housing because the community felt like there was too much multifamily housing there. Retail was to provide more options. The community wanted more opportunity for retail and restaurants and daily needs types of amenities. Parks, refine the way different park sites were counted depending on their usability to the community, jobs and economic development. The goal was to provide more educational opportunities and a better pipeline to high-paying jobs, provide more transportation options, and then a key policy with industrial land use was to locate new industrial land use outside of Southwest Fresno. So to implement these guiding principles, we needed a land use vision, and this was the conceptual stage. There were 3 land use concepts that the community really wanted to work with. One was complete neighborhoods. The other one was magnet cores, and I'll explain that in a minute. And the third concept was corridors. So with magnet cores, I believe I heard a speaker or 2 talk about those earlier this evening. Magnet cores were the locations that were determined by an economic analyst of where the best locations would be for commercial activity, market cores, where there would be best access. And the Martin Luther King or the West Creek area location was one of those. And there was another one on Marks and 180 near there. And so those two areas became focal points for what would be an intensification. And then at the same time, this idea of corridors was developed where each roadway, it was the east-west roadways, to sort of make the land use make more sense and have better connectivity, each one would have a different purpose. So Kearney Boulevard is a historic corridor, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of my slides. So let me just slow down for a moment and show you how this concept of complete neighborhoods, magnet cores, and corridors actually played out on a land use map. So there is the map having been translated to the city's land uses and trying to implement these ideas. And here are the different corridors and their different sort of positions and purposes within the land use plan. So Whitesbridge is regional retail because of the magnet core on near Marks and 180, Jensen Avenue, the jobs corridor, Elm Avenue, mixed use and jobs, Kearney Boulevard, historic, and then California Avenue is mixed use and transit. So to implement the corridors, some zoning overlays were included. And then this is just a snapshot to show you that before the Southwest Fresno specific plan was adopted, these were the general plan land uses. And you can see, the gray land use is industrial, for example. And after the plan was adopted, you can see that these are the new proposed land uses that were adopted, actually. They're not proposed anymore. And you can see that there is no longer any new, proposed industrial on the map. There's also more mixed use. You can see some of the single family densities went down. And there was just trying to focus different types of development on the different corridors. These are the proposed land use changes that occurred and the zoning changes. And just in general, the Southwest Fresno specific plan compared to the prior general plan, the general plan land uses in the project area, it limited new industrial development. It included more office land use. It included more single-family land use. It included less multifamily land use and a similar amount of mixed use and commercial uses. So that's the comparison. That's the shift that occurred. As far as the priorities, the steering committee looked at the plan and, when plans are adopted, the idea is to start using them to focus investment and resources. So a conversation had begun to develop about the State Center Community College District locating a campus on the magnet core that is now the West Creek project. And so what the priorities were that what we called it the Martin Luther King magnet core at the time. That was the #1 priority for the steering committee, to get that funded, the community college, the housing, the park. The second priority was the Marks and Whitesbridge magnet core, getting that developed at some point. And the third was the California Avenue bus rapid transit corridor. The other priorities are listed below. And here you can see in map form just geographically where those priority areas are. And these were the actions involved in the adoption, which there was, of course, an environmental impact report adopted, the Edison Community Plan was repealed, and the Southwest Fresno specific plan was adopted, along with rezoning and a text amendment for the overlays. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions?
Sophia, I do, and maybe perhaps it's off the topic, but I see the boundaries, and I just don't seem to see where Chinatown fits. Is Chinatown part of Southwest or downtown Fresno?
Chinatown is actually within the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan. It is, yes.
Sophia, I have a question. Do we have like any kind of updated report on how successful the Southwest Fresno Pacific Plan is coming along? Kind of showing like the progression of it, or?
We don't at the moment, but we every year need to prepare an update on the implementation of our general plan, and we could certainly include some highlights within that.
That would be great. It would be great to kind of see the progression of it, because I know that there was so much work put into the project itself. So I would love to kind of see like the implementation, how closely it actually aligns to the plan itself. Okay. Do we have any comments from the public, whether you're in the chambers or whether...
This one we don't need to take comments. The other one we were required to by state law.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, none. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great presentation, thank you.
So we have one item under new matters, which we're going to go ahead and continue to May 18th, 2022. That's ID 22705. Do we have any reports by the secretary?
Good evening. My only report is that we appreciate that this has been a long night and that you've put in a lot of time and appreciate your attention. We will continue to have extensive meetings over the summer. We do anticipate that we will have new appointments to the Planning Commission, which will hopefully provide a little bit of flexibility for you as members, but we know you put in a lot of time and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any unscheduled or communications? None. It's currently 8:53. Meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful night.